Right. How are we doing today?
Good, good. Yeah, I had a little. I was gonna. One of the kids was gonna get on the school bus today, but the school bus didn't come, so I had to drive him to school
Very nice.
last minute. But the parking gods were kind. They smiled upon me. There was a space left when I came back.
Right. How old are the kids?
They're eight.
Youngins?
Yeah, they're 8 and 13. Yeah.
Very nice. Mine are
Um,
19 and 16, and
oh,
16-year-old is graduating as a junior. So I have
oh,
like
wow,
32 days of school left.
wow, hot, wow. Boy, man, somebody sped up in the pandemic. Usually, it
Yeah.
slowed kids down.
Right. Well, part of it is the way it is. I'm in Maryland. At least the way they do it here, they give them a period every day that's a free study period.
Uh
If you
huh.
take a class that period for the first 3 years, then you have enough credits to graduate.
Wow. That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, she did. She hates it there. I understand. I
Uh-huh.
was not a high school fan myself, so
Yeah.
but all right. Well, why don't we I mean, I find it fascinating, some of the stuff, where you've gone from being an Antibalas and then the work you did with like TV on the radio and what
Yeah.
you're doing today. So why don't we jump in with how did you get your start? How did you end up in Antibalas? I know that you were around a little bit before that.
Yeah. I had a my first band was with my neighbor. His name's Zachary Mastoon, and he performs now under the name Coral. And he does wonderful electronic music, but he can play all kinds of instruments. And he's one of the most naturally musical people I've ever met. And we started playing music when I was 9. He was 7, and we started recording things. He actually put one of the tracks out on one of his records. It sounds like some little kids, and it is, and it has an '80s feel because it was the '80s. And
Right.
we did a few records, and we had a band in high school, and then I went to college, and I had a band with my friend Colin Stetson, great saxophonist and composer, and we had a band called Transmission. We did that for a while, and we moved to the West Coast, and then I wasn't crazy about life out there, so I moved back to the Midwest, and then eventually made my way east, where a friend named Michael Herbst got me in a band called Antibalas, and I was going to quit music. I didn't think it felt like too stressful of a lifestyle, and another good friend, my friend Josh, got me a job working at a .com, which was a new thing in the year 2000 when I moved to New York, and um, then when Bush was elected, this is like my introduction to politics. All the money went out of tech stocks, and everybody was saying, oh, all the money's going to go into security and defense stocks. I was like, oh God, this is horrible. And then we all got laid off, and they said the bubble burst.
Right.
This internet thing wasn't going to work out anyway. So everybody go home, pack up your bags. And it was 5.5 months, which you might know is 2 weeks shy of getting unemployment. I didn't know what unemployment was. I was 24, 25.
Right.
And at that point, a friend said, yo, I heard you got a contralto clarinet. And that was Jordan McLean, who was in the band Antibalas. He was starting a new band, a band called Fire of Space, very inspired by Sun Ra and by this composer named Mompo and by a few things that Jordan was digging on. And he put us together, and the guys in that group thought I'd be good for Antibalas. I didn't play the saxophone at the time. So they lent me one, and I got into it. I was just a clarinetist before that.
Yeah,
But
very.
yeah, and that brought me to about 2001. And as soon as I met Fela's musical form, I fell in love. It was the music had everything that I wanted from music, and it also had it felt like I had a natural the way I wanted to express music and feel music fit with it so well. It was like, and I was in my mid-20s at that point. A lot of my colleagues had found their musical match in different places. They had fallen in love with Coltrane or Charlie Parker or Sonny Rollins or Robert Johnson or Buddy Guy, or they'd fall in love with James Brown, or they'd um, fall in love with De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest and Public Enemy, or they'd fallen in love with Metallica, or whatever. They had experienced their calling, and they had developed mastery within a form. And that experience had eluded me. I'd never found kind of a place that felt that comfortable. And then when I met Fela's music, it was on, as they
So,
say.
so transmission was not like Antibalas.
Not at all. No transmission. We kind of drew inspiration from, I'd say, Ornette Coleman and Primus and
Nice.
like and we also loved Tim Burns' Blood Count, if you're familiar with that
I
group.
do not know that.
Tim Burn is an amazing composer and saxophonist, New York musician, and he had a group called Blood Count with Jim Black, Michael Formanek, and Chris Speed, and they were seminal for our group Transmission. We were very inspired by them and their work, and that music was like it had a relationship to jazz, and it was definitely like a cerebral sort of specialty niche music, but it wasn't like steeped in the jazz tradition. It was very progressive.
Okay.
And I found that exciting. Basically, I wanted to find things that didn't have rules that I could break on purpose or accident. I just
Right.
didn't want to think about that. I didn't want to make art in a way that somebody could whip out a measuring stick and say, "Oh, this is great. Oh, this is pretty good. Oh, I see how this is getting better." It's like, "Oh man." I didn't want the world's standards. I wanted to discover something that felt based on my own musical metabolism and dietary
Authentic.
needs. Yeah, something that felt natural.
Right.
And as God would have it, it was Fela's music,
Yeah.
which wasn't planned. I didn't have I appreciated music from all over the world, but I didn't have a particular interest in West African popular music.
Right. So how did that? How did you end up with there was a Broadway musical? Was it called Fela?
Yeah. A decade into being in Antibalas, the Bill T. Jones and the producer Steve Hendel put together a musical about the life and art of Fela Kuti. And
So you were just in the band with it?
yeah, they had Antibalas do the music, and soon within the process, it became its own ensemble, and
Right.
Antibalas went back to being Antibalas. So the actual musicians in the musical, all part of the same community, but it became its own form. And they have a group called Shop and Quench that performs now. It's beautiful music.
Okay. So that you're doing that. How do you end up making musically? I guess you would call it a 180 to working with Dave Sitek. I don't want to crush the guy's
Yeah,
name.
Siddick. Yeah.
With TV on the radio, I guess the yeahs, that whole
Yeah,
2000 New York scene that
Holly
sprung
Miranda
up.
and Foles, and yeah, we did some records. Well, Dave had a studio in Williamsburg. The place is now a J. Crew. I went in there a couple years ago. I was like, wait, man, this looks really familiar. Smells
My
better.
kid wanted me to take her to CBGB, and I was like, "It's not there anymore, baby doll." I was like, it sells it sells something, suits, maybe clothing. I'm not even sure what the store is now.
Yeah, there's new places to go now. You could take her to New Blue or Sultan Room or Trans Picos. Or there's a lot of great clubs in New York, but they come and go, just like we do, right? But yeah, so Siddick lived in Williamsburg, as did Kip and Tunde and Jaleel and Gerard in TV on the radio, and we were all part of the same community. Martine Perna, the founder of Antibalas, went to school and lived with Dave and Tunde, and I met them through him, and we all hung out. And just by being around, eventually somebody said, "Oh, bring your instrument, come over to the studio." And And it was like that. I would wake up in the morning living in Williamsburg and not know what I was going to do that day till I went and had a bagel and a coffee, find somebody making a record or find somebody to make a record with, and then go get to work. That's how I spent my time when I didn't have a rehearsal or a tour or something.
Very nice, very nice. And you ended up on the road with TV on the radio, right?
Yeah, I did the album cycle for the record called Dear Science, and
Okay.
I played on 3 or 4 of the records. But Dear Science, I played on a ton, and I did the tour with them. It's about a year of activity.
Now, was this sax that you were playing, or was it clarinet and sax?
On the records, I'd play all kinds of stuff, but on the tour, it was all tenor sax
Okay.
on the tour. Now, after me, they brought in Dave Smuda Smith, a wonderful trombone player, and I found that the sound and impact that the trombone had worked a lot better. When I heard them, I was like, yes, this is your fit. As much as I love their music, which is like some of my favorite music that's ever been made by anyone in my generation. Do you know what I mean? That I go back, I listen to those records all the time, and I just want to go make more music when I hear them. It's that
Right.
inspiring for me. But the trombone, man, I wish I could play trombone like that. It sounded so good.
Have you ever heard Bonorama out of New Orleans? Mark Mullen's
Yes.
band.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have 5 trombones. He has five
That's where
trombones,
Cardi's at, man. Trombone, the more the better. More is more.
and he has his hooked up to a wah wah. He has like as many
Woo.
pedals as some guitar players that he plays with it.
I
Um,
like that.
so you started on clarinet and then picked up saxophone later.
Yeah, yeah. When I got laid off from the .com job, I had some time on my hands and I didn't have any money. Um, I was scraping by. I was getting by. I certainly wasn't poor. I had a wonderful middle class upbringing, but I had to. I couldn't spend it. I didn't have any money to spend, so I'd spend some time at home, in my apartment, to the disappointment of my neighbors, working out on the alto saxophone, trying to learn how to play Nefertiti.
Right. Now, the saxophone, I guess, has more commercial potential in rock and roll than a clarinet, huh?
Oh man, once I got the sax sounding good enough, it was woo. Life got much more interesting and exciting. I got to play all kinds of stuff, and like I'd always been a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, but I'd never been. I mean, if I play a Clarence Clemens style on the clarinet, apart from doing a hora at a Jewish wedding, it's not going to have the emotional impact that I would want it to. It's like this what do they call it? It's like you're screaming into a tiny little instrument. You know what I mean? But the tenor sax, oh my gosh! You talk about Albert Ayler and Pharaoh and Clarence Clemens and
Right.
Bobby Keys. And there's this whole tradition of really getting your scream on with the
Hmm.
thing. And
All those
you
50s
know,
and 60s early rock and roll records all have the
oh yeah, that
sax.
stuff still intimidates me. The technique and to get so excited and play with such sensitivity at the same time, that
Yeah.
blows my mind. You
And
know, 'cause-
I've heard that like a lot of times they weren't amped. The rest of the band was. You'd have electric guitar and
Mm,
electric bass,
yep.
and then he'd be. It's all lung power there
It
for the
is, yeah, and
sax.
then you moan and sing and groan in different ways. You vocalize in ways that collide with the vibration of the reed, and it gives it this different rub.
Right.
And there's all kinds of stuff. There's a man named Earl Bostic who was a big influence on Pharaoh and I think Train, um, and he had that. It's like he had gain on a saxophone. You know, you could. It was like it. In fact, I think the amplifiers were imitating the sound of someone like Earl Bostic. He
Right.
tremendous saxophone player.
Right. Once the guitar got dirty, it was all downhill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So also during quarantine, I guess from what I read, the solo clarinet
yeah.
project thing you did. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it's I break it down on the website. It was a week into the quarantine, maybe a few days, and you know, you remember the feeling. We were all terrified. I was in a house with children, and I was experiencing it, through their lens, as people say these days, the lens. Um, and oh, we didn't know what to do. And my partner, she said, "Get your clarinet, play." So I pulled it out and she threw on Instagram and I started to play. And I just improvised basically like a rhapsody. Um, Pretty much meterless improvisation. And I love to improvise and I love the feeling of form unfolding, as the author Steven Nachmanovich has talked about in his book Free Play, which is critical to the way I feel music. But the um, the the next day we did it again, and then we did it again, and we did it again, and it lasted 150 days. We did it, and then Zoom school started, and then my morning routine changed. It was like, okay, we gotta figure out how to get these kids a Zoom class.
Right.
Um,
Now, did you find we've talked to a lot of people, and as much as quarantine and COVID sucked for the world and for most people on different levels, a lot of people expressed that it gave them a chance to step back and assess their music. You didn't have to go out and play. You couldn't go out and play live gigs
yeah,
anymore. Did
yeah,
you find anything like that? Did you discover anything during quarantine about your playing and yourself?
yeah. So, to be honest, I did a real about face, like you said. 180 degrees. I went back to the clarinet, which was my first instrument, and I went to it kind of on my knees to feel some sort of mercy in the universe and in life, and to feel something beautiful, and to feel a connection that I deeply needed, that everyone needed. And so the clarinet was there for me. And and my partner Karen, she was in, instrumental, to no pun intended, in making all of this happen, facilitating this. But it was I went back to the beginning of my musical training, I guess you'd say, and what I was playing was just me seeking the musical objects that were between my mind and the universe, and just trying to open up. We had a process where, we'd meditate and we'd pray, and then I put on a decent shirt, and then we'd throw on the camera, and I'd play for, I don't know, between 8 and 25 minutes. Um, but no, it really, really rearranged my musical practice. Now
Mm,
I still play to drones like that, but I usually just do it alone.
right.
Sometimes I throw it online.
Did you did was it good for writing? Did you come up with any? I know that the brand you have with Joe Russo, that came about after COVID or
No,
during
I
that?
I wrote that. I basically had written all most of it before COVID, and then I made the album during COVID.
Okay.
I
And
arranged the album during COVID.
that's a 9 piece, a 10 piece,
We perform with like 10 or 11, but on the record, it's probably like 24 voices at any given time.
right? And how did you guys approach that?
Um, I didn't have a ton of session time, so I had 2 or 3 days with Joe and the tuba, John Altieri, and then I had probably 4 sessions with the horns, and each session was around 2.5, 3 hours. Not a lot of time. Put the music in front of people and get a few takes, get a couple solos, and keep going. Heavily arranged, heavily prepared. So the improvised clarinet solo is the opposite. In the improvised clarinet solo, you just prepare your mind and your body. Coco, that's my cat. Coco remembers the clarinet thing. She doesn't know anything about the brass stuff. You remember that? Yeah, she was there for a lot of it. Actually, she appeared. um, but yeah, so it's the opposite. You're preparing your mind and your body to kind of receive the experience, you know? You're letting go of anything, and the other is you're composing. You're trying to, if there's anything left to question, you want the path to be very clear for everybody to kind of, kind of play what you intended, what you hear.
Right.
So
So when you play
they
a
are two sides, two
right.
different sides of the thing.
Now when you play live, with Joe, um, how do you so it's just a blueprint, what you did on the album, and you allow it to just open up and go where it goes when you're live?
We've done that occasionally, but because a lot of the stuff involves synchronicity between the musicians, we rely on the arrangements. We'll
Right.
throw in new repeats, or we'll say, "Hey, let's go back to here," or take a solo here. But it's not. It's more like a big band. So things are
Right.
pretty. They're prescribed. In order to get a big band to be very fluid improvisationally, requires both a rehearsal and a sort of vocabulary. Groups like Burnt Sugar, which is based on Butch Morris's improvising conduction groups, that they then the leader has a sort of a what they call conduction. With Butch Morris made this thing called conduction, which is it's improvised conducting with a large ensemble, so everybody can act collectively. And there is some improvising. Sun Ra had similar things, and John Zorn's had his like large
Right.
ensemble game pieces. But um, no, with our group, it's more about the music as is written.
I came across have you seen the Sun Ra movie Space is the Place?
Oh yeah,
I came across that the other day on HBO or Paramount or one of those streaming services, and I had never seen it. I was like, Isaac from the Love Boat is in it. The
really?
bar, yeah, the bartender from the Love Boat, Ted Land.
I gotta check that again. It's been a while since I've seen Space is the Place. I think it
Oh,
was probably
so
pretty late at night on like a third generation
no,
VHS tape.
let me ask you: is Sunrise that it doesn't sound like it's arranged at all? It sounds like they're just out there, kind of going with it. But I guess think I'm not a musician, so I mean, is all that stuff written out when it sounds like they're playing two different songs at the same time? And
Sometimes it is. I think uh, it runs the gamut. Some of it there's like gestures that he does. Other times there will be, I think, two ensemble pieces written out that he wants to happen at the same time.
right,
Other times, a line can be played freely, but still, have this sequence of notes. So during that whole period of time, from I think that the 40s on, there was all kinds of experimentation with different sort of notation, in what they call the Western classical. That term doesn't work, but um, composers were going at it in all kinds of different ways, and I think Sun Ra tried a whole bunch of different ways, including the hyper arrange world, which
right,
is coming out of like big band of Fletcher Henderson. It's such a great virtuoso of orchestrating things, um, all the way up to things that are feel incredibly spontaneous, and you're capturing sort of like it's more like a happening or an experimental kind of thing. Um,
right.
he had all that, and I love it all.
Right.
I'm not a scholar of it. There are
Right.
definitely Sun Ra scholars out there.
Yes.
I am a student and a relatively casual student. I only
Right.
have
Yeah.
about 8 or 9.
Yeah. I would say at best I'm a casual fan. I probably know more about Michael Ray because of his connection with like
Mm,
Fish and the Cosmic Crew would always play New Orleans at Jazz Fest, so you'd come
right,
across them.
Michael Ray. Oh, he's incredible. Wow. Yeah.
That guy's great. So on the other side, you have the big band, and then you have two things, one called Boyfriends and one called Wooden Hands, that I guess allow more towards the improvisation.
Yeah, yeah. Wooden Hands is a new group I'm working on. We're making a record this month, and that is a group with it's based on clarinet and some. I had these clarinet solo pieces. I don't know if you can hear this. My fingers, the tapping sound of just my fingers as they tap on the clarinet, as they tap the open holes on the clarinet, you get a little bit of a sort of like a sweet mid-range pop. And something about that, I don't have my clarinet handy, or else I'd show you,
Uh,
reminded me of the sound when you tap a conga right on the edge. Just a ding, 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 like you're kind of tuning it, ding, ding,
yeah,
ding, like that. Or a little bit of when you play a guitar and you put the flesh of your palm on it and you have a ding, 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 like on an acoustic guitar
right.
or on an upright bass, because you have your hands, you have your flesh on the strings and you hear the wood
It
resonating.
mutes it a
Boom,
little
boom.
almost.
Yes. So I wanted an ensemble that was all based on that tone. We would have other sounds, but we would start there. Um,
And that's
you
what
know
you
what?
ended up with, huh?
Hey, I'm so sorry. I have to. One of the kids is calling me. I
Okay.
think he's just gotten up. Is it possible for us to pause for just 5 minutes?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah, you can just, it'll, yeah, I can stop recording and start recording again. Yeah. Were we just waking up?
Working, and yeah, the mom is working, and he slept late, and yeah, I had to say good morning.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's a great age. Enjoy it.
yeah.
So you have two boys or a boy and a girl?
There's two boys.
Two
Yeah,
boys. See, I have
8
two
and
girls.
13. Oh,
And you'll be happy when the boys become teenagers. It's like, well, because my girls were so great, and then when they got to be teenagers, not that they weren't great, but you know, it
sure.
becomes a whole nother thing there.
Yeah, they say one is easier on one end and
Right. Well,
trickier
my
on the other.
granddad always said, if you have a boy, you have one penis to worry about. If you have a girl, you have them all to worry about.
That's
So
terrible.
that is, it's horrible, but there's some truth in it. Is why it's funny. All right.
Yeah,
Um.
yeah,
So with wooden hands, we were getting into wooden hands. You said you were in the
yeah.
studio recently.
Oh, yeah, we're going in the studio in a couple weeks to make our first EP, and we've done 3 or 4 shows. In the group, I have Ronaldo de Jesus, an amazing percussionist who's in Antibalas, among other bands. Adam Roberts, upright bass player who I went to college with, University of Michigan, in the '90s, and a wonderful guitarist named Will Grafe. He's incredible, and oftentimes Scott Metzger will play with us as well, another incredible guitarist, always acoustic guitar, and then the other percussion is Elizabeth Poopa Walker, who's wonderful. She played with the Dap Kings and
Right, the Dab Kings. Yeah.
Russell, and she works with all kinds of folks. My friend Kochemea, she plays on his records and tours with him. So there's a constant dialogue between the two percussion. That's one
Right.
of the.
And these are all new compositions written for this, or are they covers, or was it just composed in?
Yeah,
You're just going to go with.
I have a new set of compositions that I've started, and then I'm going to record for the EP. When we play live, we'll do some compositions that I've written over the last 30 years. I'll pull ones out that I
Right.
want to share and try and explore that way. We learned a Duke Ellington song because I
Okay.
don't know, we played a jazz festival, and I'd always wanted to play the song "Come Sunday" by Duke
Okay.
Ellington. Gorgeous
Um.
harmony.
So you said you pulled old things out. What's your progression, or do you feel like you have a progression or a point of view, uh, as a songwriter? Can you trace what you did 30 years ago to what is happening now and see an arc through it?
Um, yeah, like I think it's just constantly striving to express. Uh, you're reaching into the same void to find the surprises and the inspiration. Yeah, it's the same. Um, I unfortunately don't have as much time to compose as I used to. Um,
Life
and
gets in the way, huh?
it does. And because I have performing commitments, I'll practice because you don't want to go out there and you want to remember how to play the instrument when you're in front of people. So that always feels a little bit more pressing of a need than sitting down and working your way through some harmonies or reharmonies. And it makes me sad to think about because I do get so much joy out of trying to open myself up. for creative ideas. But I put a lot of creativity into the arranging work that I do. I do all kinds of arranging for people, and I have a sort of compositional voice that informs that a lot. Um,
Okay.
and I do a lot of like soundtracking things and composing for film, and I've done a bunch of work with modern dance lately and some visual art, collaborative stuff, and but
Right.
to answer the question, figuring out how to improvise a clarinet solo that has all the compositional dramatic elements of thematic recalls and kind of explore different places scratches a similar itch as the songwriting would. I
Okay.
haven't thought of it. I also never really thought of it as songwriting. Songwriting was part of it sometimes when there was words
Right.
or a lyrical shape, but I've always thought of it more as composing because
Right.
as long as I can remember, I was fascinated by music that wasn't necessarily a song. You know, it would either be like, well, I loved breakdancing music when it came out in the early 80s, like early hip hop, the band Nucleus and the
Right.
Dynamic Three. And house music was really popular on college radio in Chicago, and you could hear it. And electronic music and new wave. And when I would hear the instrumentals without the lyrics, I was even more thrilled by it because I loved hearing the drum machines and the sequencers. And um, so I always loved instrumental music, which made it not feel like a song in the same way. Of course, it
Right.
could be considered a song. I guess we're just talking about perspectives in a way. But where the arc has led me is to improvising it and improvising it in a way that feels compositional.
Okay.
So it's spontaneous composing.
Do you feel that uh, instrumental being going out and playing mostly instrumental? I guess some of the Antibalas stuff you had lyrics on, right?
Oh,
Like
sure. Yeah.
that metal song. What was that?
Beaten metal.
Yeah, beaten metal.
Yeah.
Didn't that have lyrics?
Uh, we never used the lyrics.
Okay.
I actually wrote some terrible lyrics, and thankfully we didn't use them. It was like a sort of a choir thing that I wanted to
Right.
do.
Okay.
Um,
It's harder to sell instrumental music. Do you ever think about that when you're, you know, just y- people who come see instrumental music, I guess, pay attention more. I feel like
huh?
songs have lyrics a lot of times to hold people's attention. So maybe they'll
Yeah.
listen to the instrumental passage in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, I operated in that way. And I realized I was making what I was really thrilled about was the instrumental parts of vocal music. And I was looking to have the whole package in that way. And then I realized that what I needed to do was just make the parts that I was compelled to, just make the music sound the way I was compelled to, and let the universe and serendipity and collaboration take care of the rest. And it may feel like there's more vocal music being sold as a commodity or streamed and those things, but that's when your audience is fans.
Hmm.
And a lot of my audience is my colleagues. It's
Right.
filmmakers, it's choreographers and
Right.
dancers, it's visual artists,
Right.
and it's people in dramatic industries. And then there's also advertising and film underscore and
Right.
those kinds of things. And in those worlds, it's instrumental is the name of the game.
Right. Now that's one of the best ways. I mean, talking to bands, sync licensing, getting in films, is
Yeah,
really, besides playing live, is one of the few ways to survive as a musician. I mean, you aren't going to make your living off of Spotify.
that's true. That's true. But I do the music to survive. The
Right.
music is what keeps me alive. And the rest is, I'm not going to pretend to understand economics enough.
Right.
I often think about the plight of the musician as worker and
Hmm.
the necessity for kind of union practices, and I've been in and out of the musicians union. And there's a great group called the Music Workers Alliance that's really active right now and doing things for the rights of musicians. And there's all the kinds of ways that we need to collectively get together and figure out how to bargain in the interest of us and in the interest of the culture that we uphold. But it's important for me to remind myself that the music, it's not how to survive while doing music. It's doing the music to survive existence.
Right.
You know, it's loving because loving.
Right. I hear you with that. So what do you're playing around, what bands are you playing with now? What projects do you have? Well, if someone wanted to come see in the next month or two, where would they be going?
Yeah. Well, April 20th, I'm playing with a group called Joyful Noise at Public Records. We do a bi-monthly there. It's like live house music, dance music kind of thing. It's a label called Razor and Tape. Um, there's a bunch of DJs, a bunch of remixes, and they're putting out music all the time. And a lot of times the vocalists will come and they'll present these songs that they've put out with a live band. And I get to play in that group. Not being in Antibalas, but I still sit in with Antibalas sometimes, but not being in them all the time has left a real hole in my heart to play dance music. I love to play music for bodies in motion, and it's such a fundamental aspect to music. It's like the togetherness part of music is when we're moving in synchronicity. It's an incredible feeling. So the group of Joyful Noise has been able to keep that a part of my life.
Right.
While I get to be kind of weird and experimental in other areas. And then the group Wooden Hands, we're playing at New Blue on a week from Tuesday.
Okay.
That's I forgot what day is that? I think it's like
Yeah, I
April.
can't do that math either. It's okay.
It's
It's
either
like the
24
19th or
or 25.
something.
Yeah, 24, 25, I think it is. One of those
24. Okay.
days. Yep. And it's an early show, and we'll do one set of our music while we're working on the EP. We're doing a show
Nice.
because a performance is a great rehearsal, as they say.
Yes, it definitely is. Um, so what about boyfriends? Does that play anymore? Or?
The Boyfriends hasn't done anything since the pandemic, but that was
Okay.
an amazing group we had with Joe and drummer Ben Porowski. Yeah, Joe Russo, Ben Porowski,
Josh
Josh Kaufman,
Kaufman. Right.
myself. Yeah, that was
Um.
a wonderful.
So,
All
so
improvised that group.
right, we've brought up Joe Russo a couple times. I believe you played when they did the Garcia Whales, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
way
The
back, and recently you sat in with them and did some stuff. You want to talk a little bit about? I mean, I mentioned the Garcia Whales because I so wish that Russo's that almost dead would break out some of that stuff sometimes. I mean, that might
oh
be my favorite Garcia studio album was
yeah,
the work that he did on that. But you want to talk a little bit about playing with them because you said you loved watching the bodies moving, and you get that when you play with them.
I do. I have another 180 in my life has been learning to love the repertoire of the Grateful Dead. I didn't get it for so long. I mean, I liked Ripple. Everybody likes Ripple. It's not a jump, but when you
Right.
start like digging in and like appreciating like uh, some of the more weird and kind of there's a sense of humor to the music, and I try explaining it to a lot of my friends that don't feel the Dead, what it's like to come around to the music and to feel it and enjoy it. And I've been given a great gift. I've been given a second chance, and I've really fallen in love with the music and playing it. What made it easy was Jerry's ballads. That was inarguably just
Mm-hmm.
such straight up poetry, and the natural frailty of his voice is. Josh Kaufman said he's like Grateful Dead are like the original indie rock band, and when you think about like the kind of like what's like there's just like a tenderness in Jerry Garcia's voice, an
Right.
unpreciousness.
Well,
It's yeah.
we were talking to Matt Ruffino. You know him; he's a mixer. He does the Today Show on
Oh,
NBC in the morning. But he like Spafford recently, I guess, had worked with him, and he said that the Grateful Dead were more punk than anything you hear on the radio today. And I was like, I can
Yeah,
get with that.
yeah. I'm not sure how much you heard the Grateful Dead on the radio at all, other
Right.
than a
Well, but
couple.
he was just saying the
Yeah.
do-it-yourself attitude they had in the
Yes.
beginning, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
whole 9 yards. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right,
Oh no, I mean that's a beautiful thing.
the
They
anarchy, the
Yeah.
embracing of the anarchy is
It's an incredible thing. Nobody was like tripping on other people. The power thing that you hear about.
yeah,
All of those evil spirits, seem to go easy on them. They made
yeah,
it through. They made it so far. And what a
right.
wonderful gift they gave people by being able to keep it together like that. Because you put yourself in those situations that it's not easy to keep the family together.
No,
You know,
not at all, not
but
at all.
it's an amazing story
I
and
think
it's
a lot of it
inspiring.
was the path of least resistance on Garcia's part. He was
Mm.
just like, whatever. All right,
Yes, sheer acceptance.
you know,
Yeah,
ego
and
death, ego
yeah,
death.
and deep love of the music. Putting that
Definitely.
first.
So do
Yeah.
you have anything else you want to throw out there? Anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to let anybody know about?
Um, no. I worked on a record recently by a rapper producer named Logic that I'm really excited about the work.
Not DJ Logic,
Not
another guy.
DJ Logic, a rapper named Logic, and he's a few years younger than me, and he has a fantastic approach, and I loved working with him, and I'm just so thrilled that I got to work on some hip hop music. Spent a lot of time listening to hip hop and not enough time getting to make any because I just
Not.
blow the horn.
I mean, what did you do? Did you build the beat on it, or
No, no, I went in with a pile of horns and
okay?
did a whole bunch of some sort of arranged stuff and then just some straight kind of blowing,
Oh, very
improvising, and
nice.
and then
I
and then
know.
he worked it into little corners
All
and
right.
nooks in music.
I mean, I guess you can. We have Guru to thank for a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
mashup of the live jazz and the
Yeah, the
rap and stuff.
jazzmatazz.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that
king of
was
monotone there.
yeah. Oh
I love
man,
it.
Gangstar is whew,
Uh,
hard to earn. Is probably that's in my top five.
yeah,
Um, oh God, I love that record so much.
yeah, that was fantastic. I love that you did that. We'll have to keep my eye out for that. But
Yeah.
yes, I wanted to just thank you for coming on and
Oh, thank
sharing
you.
some of your time with us. I'm going to stop the recording, then we'll talk for a
Okay.
sec.